You guys, we are really in for a treat. It was my pleasure last year. I first was introduced to Rasmus, and I take yoga, and I told this story last year that I am completely that type A person who at the end of yoga, when they do a shavasana, and you're supposed to lay there on the floor for 5 minutes and not move, I'm the one with the eye open going, is everybody really asleep? So if you are like me and you need to just find some mindfulness and compassion, you've come to the right place. So Rasmus Hougaard is the founder and managing director of Potential Project, the global leader in customized leadership and organizational training programs based on mindfulness. With a proven track record of enhancing individual and collective performance, resilience, and creativity, Potential Project works with Fortune 500 companies such as Accenture, Nike, KPMG, Microsoft, EY, Sony, and many others across Northern America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Rasmus has led more than 1,500 workshops and programs and is recognized as the leading international authority on training the mind to be more focused, effective, and clear in organizational context. His book, 1 Second Ahead, was published in 2015 and has sold over 20,000 copies globally. He's a regular contributor to publications such as Business Insider, Harvard Business Review, for his thought leadership and knowledge. Please welcome Rasmus to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for the invitation to be here again this year. It was great joy and fun to be here last year, and I am thrilled to see that the room is so full. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming here. Yes, I've led 1,500 workshops on something different than I'll talk about today. So I'll just be totally upfront. I'm a little bit nervous for the first time in many, many years standing on a stage because you're going to be guinea pigs, and I hope you're going to like it. Today is the first completely hot off the press presentation on a new program that will launch in March next year, which is not just about mindfulness, but also selflessness and compassion. So I really hope you'll like it, and I hope there'll be some really tangible outcomes and things for you to go home and use. Before I go into any of that, I'm really curious why you guys are here. I mean, you saw mindfulness and compassion. It all sounds very fluffy and weird, right? So would you just mind take 1 minute, turn to your neighbor, and just share why you're here? Why did you come to this session? All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. This is about mindfulness. We're supposed to be kind of centered and focused. Come on. All right, so who would just like to share? I would like to hear two people. Why did you come to this session specifically? Who would like to share? Yes.
I head up program board for my organization, and within our program we have workout, we got eating well, stressing less is one of our things we really want to do, and it's one that doesn't get much attention.
Right.
And it's not as well developed.
Got it. So the mental side of, very good. Okay, thank you. Right. Right. So doing it privately and wanting to do it professionally. Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm traveling around the world and doing a lot of work with organizations, as you just heard about. And what we have realized over the past few years, we've done this mindfulness thing for 10 years and found that it's incredibly powerful and effective for leaders to be more focused, to be more aware, to be better at being leaders and better at being human beings. But we realized that there is something else that is missing. Mindfulness is great and important, but it's not enough. So we decided a few years ago to embark on a fairly significant research to find out, what do leaders need nowadays? What is it that is core qualities for any leader nowadays to be successful, both in his or her own life, but also in leading the organization? So that is basically the research that I'll be sharing with you guys today, and as I mentioned, for the first time. So if I make any mistakes, please bear with me. Also remember, I'm Danish. It's not my first native language. I'll do my very, very best. Is that okay? Very good. So first of all, what we found when we went on this research was there's a huge leadership crisis today. As you can see up here, there's a very, very tremendous lack of engagement in the global workforce. 13% of the workforce is engaged. That's like astounding, right? 24%, is even more, are actively disengaged. There's a real problem here. Secondly, people in workplaces are suffering. There are just so many toxic workplaces out there. And I mean, that's horrible, right? Of course we want more money, but we'd rather get rid of our boss. Sad. Okay. There's a lack of leadership. Research has found that 77% of leaders think that they're doing a great job in being leaders. But it's very contradicted by their employees. 82% of them actually say, I don't have a great leader. And all of this is despite the fact that just in the US, $20 billion is spent on leadership training every year. What's going on? I mean, what's happening? One of the reasons, as far as we can tell, is that leadership training nowadays is very much like medicine in the US in the 18th century. There is absolutely no credentials needed, no standards, and no evidence. And you'll see it on YouTube, on TED Talks, you'll see it in books on Amazon, on articles, all kinds of places. Anyone can come up with a great idea, maybe based on anecdotal evidence and inspirational stories about how leaders should act, without having any experience and without having any evidence. Does any of you know any of those kind of books and stuff out there? There's a lot of that, sorry, I was about to say crap. There's a lot of that inspirational stuff out there. However, there is that gap between the money that is spent on it and results that are just missing. So what we decided to do 2 years ago was to try and develop the evidence base of what works in leadership. So together with many of our clients, more than 350 global organizations, we embarked on this journey. We did assessments of more than 35,000 leaders from 120 different countries and more than 500 organizations. We have done in-depth interviews, and I'll be sharing some of those during this talk, with more than 200 executives and CEOs of some of the largest organizations in the world. We are collaborating with some of the leading researchers in neurology, in organizational science, and so on. And then finally, we've got this fantastic relation and partnership with Harvard Business Review, which are our partners in this whole research project. What we have learned throughout this is basically three things. First of all, the whole myth of this fantastic, heroic MBA leader is just so dead. The whole idea of a Jack Welch that comes into an organization on his big white horse and with his cowboy hat and just solves all the problem and, expands the bottom line, it just doesn't exist anymore. In fact, a lot of research is finding that those 40% of CEOs that have MBAs, they actually deliver poor results than those who do not have MBAs. And they create more toxic environments. Very, very, very disappointing. So that's definitely not the case anymore. Secondly, we learned that leadership starts in the mind. And most of the leadership training that we find out there, an MBA, any kind of leadership training, most of it is really based on how do we learn to manage our organization? How do we get the strategy right? How do we get the numbers right? How do we secure the bottom line? All the numbers, great and good. But if you don't know yourself, if you don't have awareness of yourself, and if you're not able to lead yourself, you're not able to have awareness or lead your people. And if you don't have that, you don't have awareness of what your organization really is, and you can't lead your organization. This is one of our main findings. It has to start in the mind of the leader. Otherwise, it's like starting with building the roof and then the fundament of a house afterwards. Does that make sense? Yeah. So leadership starts in the mind. And the last finding we found throughout all this research is that 3 mental qualities that are needed for leaders nowadays is mindfulness, selflessness, and compassion. And what I'll do over the next 31 minutes and 26 seconds is to outline what are those things, give some great examples, give the research, do a practice, and give you some tools on each of those three. So we've got a fairly full program. Are you game for a tour de force through being a leader in the 21st century? Great, okay. So the first thing I'll say is, the great thing about all of this is that, and I just have to compliment my friends down here, when we put up this slide this morning, the video didn't work, and I don't know what you've done, but it works. Thank you very much. So the first thing to say is neuroplasticity. How many knows about neuroplasticity? Quite some of you, okay. Basically, the message from neuroscientists is that our brain is changing, and it's changing every second according to how we use it. Meaning, the qualities, the attitudes that we bring into our lives are the things that we develop. Basically, for every moment we are mindful, paying attention, our brain becomes more mindful. It's that simple. Same goes for selflessness, same goes for compassion. So all of those three things can be trained from a neurological point of view. All right, so with that little thing, let's dive into it. First of all, mindfulness. Mindfulness is really being present, fully focused, really focusing on what we're doing, and having awareness of what's going on around us and inside of us. Question is, why is mindfulness important nowadays? And there's a really good answer to that. With all of these clients we work with, we've interviewed them to understand what is their reality. And what they come up with, regardless of region, regardless of country or part of the world, is what we call the paid reality. People feel they're under pressure, always on, information overload, and distracted. How many of you can tick at least 3 of those 4 boxes in your own life? Very good. Or sad, whatever it is. Anyway, the interesting thing about the paid reality is that it is a heavy attack on our attention, our ability to pay attention, to be focused. And what researchers have found is that people working in organizations like most of you guys, your ability to pay attention at will, moment to moment, to your emails, in meetings, to the people you're with, and when you come home, has declined significantly. It's called attention deficit trait, and it's a global phenomenon. They actually put a number on this. 46.9% of our time, we are involuntarily not paying attention to what we want to pay attention to. Basically half of our lives. If we put that into a work perspective, half of the time we are paying attention, and we have all of those things. The other half is not very great. So from a return on investment perspective, mindfulness should be front and center of any leader for him or herself, and certainly for his or her organization. So basically, with the research coming from Accenture, we are living in what could be called an attention economy. And nowadays, managing attention is becoming an imperative for business success. It's like years ago, we measured success in how much time we had and what the skills we had to solve the problem. But nowadays, if we are sitting and we've got 2 hours for a task, so we've got the time, we've got the skills, if we're constantly distracted by all kinds of things, we won't manage. So attention is becoming a key foundation of performance. Make sense? Okay. So if that makes sense, good question is, how attentive are you guys? So I'll just allow you to figure out for yourself now in 30 seconds. It won't hurt a lot. It's a little test. You don't need to share it with anybody. To do this, close your eyes for 30 seconds now. And choose one thought that you want to think of. Just one thought. If any thoughts come into your mind, don't think about them. If you get distracted by sounds, don't listen to the sounds. One thought, 30 seconds, starting now. All right, so you can let go of the thought if you're still thinking of it and open your eyes again. And with an honest raise of hands, how many of you had one or more other thoughts than the one you actually chose to think of? Okay, welcome to the attention economy and to attention deficit trait. That's what you just experienced. How many of you had thoughts about something that had happened just before this experience, or maybe later or earlier today or yesterday, like something about the past? How many had some thoughts related to the future? How many got distracted by sounds? How many had an inner commentator asking yourself, how am I doing? Am I doing well? I'm not. Okay. Very good. Thank you. So if you had any of those, you had like the 4 key things that people experience when they do this exercise, the 4 threats to mindfulness. Basically the past, the future, inner commentary, and all the distractions out there. It's a little bit like John up here on the screen, sitting Monday morning having to write a really important report, but his mind is somewhere else. Later in the day, he finally gets to play his golf, but again, his mind is somewhere else. And finally, he's hopefully with his wife and thinking back at work. So this is attention deficit trait in action. And it's really ironic because the past is gone. It'll never, ever come back. Would you agree? The future, I mean, it hasn't arrived. It's just a theory. It doesn't exist. So none of those exist. The only thing we have is right here and right now. And we're missing out of that. We're missing out of life. We're missing out of focus, performance, well-being, connections with the people we love. So that is why mindfulness is becoming increasingly important, because of the paid reality leading to attention deficit trait, and we all become Johns. So just a few examples of leaders that have taken this practice deeply, deeply to heart. Maura McCaffrey is the CEO of a very large health insurer up on the East Coast in Boston. She's bringing mindfulness into all of her leadership teams because she found herself that all of these distractions were taking away from not just the individual focus on performance, but also the team and the organizational performance. And she found that mindfulness really helped to develop that skill of being razor sharp, focused, and clear-minded so that you can make the best decisions, do the right things without being distracted. And there are thousands and thousands of leaders nowadays that are finding exactly the same thing. But the other aspect of mindfulness is the awareness, that horizontal, that global awareness of understanding, knowing what's going on around us, knowing what's going on inside of us so that we notice when we're stressed, we notice when we're making wrong decisions. With the quote of Nan Chaudhary, who is the CEO of a global not-for-profit organization, saying mindfulness provides the awareness that enables responsivity versus reactivity. So when we're really caught up in this paid reality and attention deficit trait, we end up reacting to everything without having that split second of break, split second of pause in the mind that allows us to make the right decisions. And those are the 2 key qualities that mindfulness are offering us. The ability to be focused on what we do, present with the people we're with, and the ability to notice when we get distracted or when we do things that we should do differently, and then bring it back to the focus. Very simple. Focus and awareness, that's what mindfulness is. And if we look at the research on mindfulness, researchers are finding a lot of things here. First of all, that it enhances work-life balance, job performance, problem-solving, job satisfaction, collaboration, creativity, and focus, and a lot of other great things. What's funny? Did I say something? Okay. And other things for the body, for the leadership, for the mind, but this one, mostly interesting. Mindfulness actually increases our prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain just behind the forehead. It's associated with rational thinking. It's associated with attention and focus, but also with executive function, our ability to choose our actions moment to moment. And what researchers have found is when we engage in mindfulness practice, it's actually getting slightly thicker. Our brain is physically growing. Very, very good thing. So that's what researchers are finding. Part of our research, we found that 73% of leaders find that they're unmindful. They're basically distracted most of the time. I mean, that's a really, really sad number, right? And 96% of leaders would really want to be more mindful. So the question is, how do we become more mindful? And instead of answering that, I will take you through a 2-minute mindfulness practice, if that is okay with you guys. Has anybody not ever done mindfulness before? 3, 4, 5, yeah, okay. Okay, so I'll just guide through a very brief practice, which will also set us up for going into the next section. So take a moment to check in with your body, that you're sitting comfortably. Both feet on the ground with a grounded balance, straight back. Close your eyes. Breathe through your nose. Allow your body and your mind to just relax. There is nothing you need to achieve in the next minute. And direct your full attention in a gentle, relaxed way to your breathing. Just simply sit and observe the in-breath and the out-breath. Breathing in, knowing you're breathing in. Breathing out, knowing you're breathing out. If you get distracted, just notice it with awareness and bring back your focus to your breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Now in your own pace, let go of the practice, open your eyes and return attention to this room. So this skill is really, really important, the ability to harness our attention when we need to, which is basically all the time, especially as leaders, and it can be trained. A few practical tips that I'll just give you that you can go home and do to become more mindful is, first of all, stop multitasking. And we've written a whole book about multitasking and mindfulness, how you become more mindful. You can get it out in the bookshop out there. But there's just the most incredibly evidence that multitasking is just the mother of all evil when it comes to performance and to well-being. Don't go there. Secondly, be here now. Keep that as a mantra for anything you do. Whatever you do today, be here now. Be, don't do. Here, meaning here. Don't think you're somewhere else. And now means right now. Not in the past, not in the future. Right here, right now. And then I'll invite you to do an assessment, a mindfulness assessment, just to get a more accurate picture of where you are in terms of mindfulness. So we developed this thing together with Accenture and Harvard Business Review. And it's on Harvard Business Review's page. And if you want a link to that, you can come and give me your details. I'll send it out. Anyone who wants to get these information, just come and give me your card or your email address afterwards, and I'll send out the link. When you've done the assessment, you'll be forwarded to a site where you get an app and where you get all kinds of really practical tools for starting your own daily mindfulness practice, including all of the research that I just shared and much, much, much more. Okay? Very good. This finishes mindfulness, and we have done this for 10 years. We know it works, and that is really, really important. But, as mentioned, we found that more things were needed for leaders to be effective. So we'll now move into the next part, which is selflessness. Selflessness, to be more concerned with the needs of others than those of yourself, which is really important for leaders. Dominic Barton, the global CEO of McKinsey, he has interviewed more than 1,700 heads of state and CEOs of corporations. And his conclusion is that selflessness is one of the 5 most important qualities in leadership. Why is that? It is because if we have a big ego and we bring that into our way of leading, we are very vulnerable for criticism. If anybody comes and says something about us that we don't like, we get angry. And we become very tunnel vision oriented. Secondly, it makes you susceptible for manipulation. If you have a big ego, it's very, very, very easy to manipulate you, to do things because you just need to push that ego. Thirdly, it narrows your vision to confirmation bias. If you have a strong ego and you have very strong opinions, you will always be looking to confirming those biases. And lastly, it corrupts your behavior. Tons of study finding that if we have a big ego, that runs our behavior, and it's not always good. Actually, quite often, it's not good at all. So, with the words of CEO and chairman of Lane Crawford Group, and who's the biggest luxury retailer in Asia, a multi-billion-dollar business, basically saying the leader's most important and challenging job is to keep the ego in check. Important, yes, because otherwise we can't be effective. But challenging, yes, because we all do have an ego. And this ego wants to be recognized. This ego wants to be on the stage all the time, in the light. And it's very hard to keep it down. And it takes practice. And it's not that we need to get rid of the ego. It's not that we need to get rid of all of our own interests, because that won't work either. With the words of CEO of Shiseido in Hong Kong, Morgan Tan, basically, without self-confidence, selflessness makes you a doormat. They must go together. So we've developed a concept for selflessness combined with self-confidence, looking like this, a matrix. Selflessness instead of being selfish, but also self-confident rather than being diffident. And up in that second quadrant where we have the good combination of selflessness and self-confident, Adam Grant is talking a lot about this in his book, Give and Take. That's where we become an enabling leader. It's not about us. We enable others to do what they have to be good at. And thereby multiplying the impact that we have because we make others enablers of what we need to do. As opposed to being a pushover leader, a doormat, or being very narcissist-oriented or very egoist-oriented. Does it make sense? So the combination of those two are very important. We need to know ourselves, have self-confidence, and then let go of our own interests. Be in the interest of our people and being in the interest of the organization that we're leading or the team that we're leading. Another big part of selflessness, with the words of Anish Melwani, the CEO in the US for LVMH, the biggest luxury retailer in the world. Selflessness helps us see the interconnectedness of organization and makes us understand our modest contribution. So let's take that part first. No matter how great a leader you are only one person of a whole group. No matter how great you are, the total outcome or impact of the organization, like the Jack Welch thing, it's not about you. It's about what your people do. You may be leading 100 people. There's no way you will ever outweigh what they do, what their contribution is. So that selflessness leads to a sense of understanding the interconnectedness of the organization, and that leads to a sense of humility and gratitude, which is integral of being a selfless leader. Coming with a humble state of mind. Does it make sense? Thank you. Research on selflessness is quite compelling as well. Finding that in organizations where there's selfless leadership behavior, we have more engagement, sense of belongingness, team citizen behaviors, sense of recognition, and innovation. Some of the key challenges that are faced in organizations nowadays are actually solved very much by selfless leadership behavior. And a lot of other great things here. And most important, successful leaders are more others-oriented. A lot of studies finding that people that actually put their ego outside the door are perceived as stronger and better leaders and actually also receive or achieve better results. So a little exercise on selflessness. I would like you to turn to your neighbor, and only one gets to talk now. The other one gets to observe. You have to tell, from you got up this morning and until you got into this room, tell the story of how that all happened. Without using the words I, me, mine, and my. Are you game? 1 minute and counting. Go ahead. All right. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, humans. Okay, so I have a prize. If anybody in this room managed not to use any of those words up there, I will. Ah, wow. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, you'll all get a hug from me if you want. Remember, this is the first time I'm doing this presentation. I didn't know if it would be 1 or 10. Had it been 1, I would have said, I'll give you a free book, but there are not that many books out there, I'm afraid. Just totally honest here. All right. Was it hard? How many used those words, even though you tried not to? Most of you, okay, yeah. So we all have this, what is called a self-referential neural network. The way we understand ourselves is by referencing to ourselves all the time. It's deeply ingrained in our neural networks, and therefore really, really hard to describe our world without referring to ourselves. And the leader's work is to do that a little bit less, because the research is showing that the less we're occupied with ourselves and the more we just naturally, by default, is others-oriented, the better results we'll have. So here are 2 things that I'll invite you to play around with. When you write emails, and I say when you write emails because that's where you're kind of sitting by yourself and you're not with others and under the same pressure, try not to use those words. It's really interesting exercise. So try and do that with a number of emails you're writing every day. Don't use those words. Clear? Second one, for 2 weeks, have a gratitude log on your desk in your office before you go home every day. Make sure you write down, it can just be 1 or 2 words, but 3 people that you want to acknowledge for what they have done. Because you would be zero, zip, nothing without your people. And your ability to express that, realize it and express it, is going to help you to have that more humble approach to you as a leader. Clear? Very good. Okay, so now we'll go into the last one, and I've got 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Are you game for some compassion? Yeah. Very good. And by the way, that thing with the hug, anybody who wants a hug can come and have it. All right. Compassion, the intention to be of benefit for others. Now, a few years ago, we thought compassion is something that needs to come into organizations in like 10 years. But everybody starts to talk about it, and there's a lot of research on it. So now is the time. It was very clear when we talked to all these many, many, many leaders. Compassion is the most rising need in organizations nowadays. We're right now at JW Marriott. I don't know how many of you know the story or know the values of Marriott. It's an impressive organization. This is the CEO, Arne. We've had some great conversations, and he has been explaining to me what is their business strategy. This is their business strategy. Basically, a very people-centric organization. If we take care of our people, they take care of our guests, and business take care of themselves. Now, it sounds easy, right? When things are going well and you've got great hotels, very acknowledged, you just buy Starbucks, things are well. This sounds like words are cheap, right? But this has been with them for many, many years. It was also with them at 9/11. Can you imagine being in the hotel business when overnight on the 9th of 11th, everybody stopped flying. Nobody stayed in hotels anymore. They went from one day to the other to have an occupancy rate of more than 90 to be less than 10. Just imagine having more than 5,000 hotels that drops like that. Having more than 400,000 employees that have got nothing to do. What do you do? Now, what most organizations would do is, of course, look at the shareholders. Now, we need to take care of the shareholders, meaning we need to do some massive layoffs here. They did not do that. They had 3 principles. First of all, no benefits are taken away. Secondly, no insurance, no security is taken away. So everybody kept their full security and all their benefits. That's impressive, and one of the only companies that actually did that in this crisis. Thirdly, they went and they talked to all of their employees or associates, as they called them, And they said, over the next year, this is going to be really tough. We really, really, really want you to stay within Marriott, but we're not sure that we've got work for you. So please go out and look if you can be a taxi driver part-time or if you can do other work. And by the way, we are like skyrocketing our education system. So they have a whole internal university. People started educating themselves so that they could go and find other jobs. So they've really stood together as a, can you imagine a global family of 400,000 people to go through this crisis without having to lay off a lot of people? Now that is really compassion in action. Would you agree? And there are more and more organizations that are starting to get this people-centric, people-first philosophy. Another one is Accenture. And tomorrow, Rahul Varma, their global learning officer, will be giving a talk as well on what they call the truly human. I really recommend you to go to that one. We just spent a week together last week. They are completely revamping a culture also of 400,000 people. It's impressive. But basically, this is their CAO, Chief Analytics Officer, not of Marriott, sorry, that should be Accenture. Remember, first time I showed this slide, right? Apologies. Okay, Accenture, Chief Analytics Officer from Accenture. Basically saying that he joined Accenture 20 years ago and found that it was a very cohesive organization. Everybody came out of St. Charles in Chicago. Everybody came from the same kind of families with the same kind of education. Very cohesive and easy. And nowadays, it's just so dispersed. It's so virtual, so disruptive. So what do you do when you have such a large organization where most people are working from home? His realization was compassion. Because in this kind of reality, people's engagement and loyalty is going to wane. And what keeps people engaged and loyal, committed, is if there's a real, truly human, compassionate culture. And that's what he's developed within his very large global team of analysts. Compassion becomes a real strong business asset. And with the words of Jeff Weiner, CEO of LinkedIn, compassion without wisdom is folly. Wisdom without compassion is ruthless. So we need the combination of wisdom and compassion. It's not enough just to be fluffy and try and do the best. I once heard a quote saying, "The path to hell is paved with good intentions." So if you don't lay off people, and meaning the company goes down the drain, that's not smart. It may be compassionate, but it's not smart. So again, a matrix, professional compassion. We need to combine compassion with professionalism. We need to have high professionalism and high compassion, which makes us a really professional, compassionate leader, as opposed to being well-intended but making really poor decisions or being indifferent or cold-hearted and manipulative. Just think about for a moment, whatever company you're within, where would you plot that company culture within this matrix? The research on compassion is quite compelling as well. Finding that organizations that have more compassionate cultures have stronger connections between people, better collaboration, higher trust, enhanced loyalty, and lower turnover, and a number of other great things. And just like with selflessness, research finds that compassionate leaders are perceived as more stronger, more impactful. And our research finds that 91% of leaders say that compassion is very important for leadership, but 80% would like to enhance their compassion, but don't know how. If I would ask in this room, if you want to be more compassionate, would you know how to do that? Some say no. So who would say yes? Okay, very good. So there's a proven pathway for developing compassion. It's been practiced in the East for 2,000 years, and is a combination of these four qualities: developing loving kindness, the intention that you want to see other people happy; empathetic joy, meaning taking joy and so on in others' happiness rather than having envy. Compassion is the wish to alleviate others' suffering, and equanimity is the wish to see others as equal, not as people you like and people you dislike, and these you try and fight and these you kind of hold on to. But having all of those four qualities is basically what makes up compassion. And we don't have time for a practice, which is really sad. So we won't do that now, but I'm very happy to if you can give me your address, I will be happy to send out the link when the book comes out, and there'll be an app and all kinds of things. That will be in March next year, so you have to wait a bit. That will be coming out. But 3 things that you can do also today is, first of all, whoever you meet, ask yourself, how can you be of benefit today, but also when you go to work again. Always have that intention when you meet somebody. How can I be of benefit? How can I contribute to this person's happiness, even if it means tough feedback? Secondly, random acts of kindness, and that's specifically for today. I want you to do 2 things today that is unexpected, random, to somebody you meet without having any expectations of getting any return. Clear?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, and then the last one, be kind whenever possible. It's always possible. Make that your mantra. There is not any situation in the world where you can't be kind. Kind can mean being tough. A kind kick in the ass is really skillful. But do it with kindness. All right. So that was the end. Again, if anybody wants the link to the assessments and all these tools, please don't come and give me your credit card. You can do that too, but your email address is enough. You can also give it to my partner, Jacqueline, who is sitting in orange. She put on orange so you can better recognize her. Thank you very, very much.